Welcome to another edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by a man who does not like to be touched on the shoulder. It's Scott Beck. And Scott, what do we always say in the postseason? It's not just the postseason, all the time. You've got to watch the matches in order to understand what the matches mean. We just saw that Xochitl Mota-Pettis had a revenge win against Adekoye. Revenge from the Grandview Open. Went down to the wire. She tried to have a desperation move and got thrown to her back. This time, Xochitl Mota-Pettis from Missouri Valley won by fall, but when you look at the results, she was down 8-0 and got the fall. Interesting result to kick off this postseason for the NAIA.
Yeah, I mean, you and I literally said when we saw the result, I'm like, Kyle, one or two things happened. Either Mota-Pettis went out there, blitzed her, and killed her, or it was, she could have been losing and got the fall, and it turned out that was the case. Adekoye is very talented. She got pinned. Mota-Pettis is dangerous, can throw from anywhere, anytime, and we'll probably see that one again.
Result of the weekend, one that we had circled, and that was at the Mid-South Conference Championships. Anaya Falcon defeated Stefana Jelasic of Lords 4-4. Again, I didn't get to see it, but fortunately, Track Wrestling has the breakdown of what happened in the scoring sequences. It looks like Jelasic was up 4-2, and then Falcon got a takedown with about 33 seconds to go in the match, but that sets up a possible rematch at the NAIA Championships. Right now, you look at a freshman season for Anaya Falcon, she just keeps winning. The only wrestler she hasn't beaten is Sage Mortimer from Grand Valley State. Every test put in front of Falcon so far, she's passed. What a freshman season.
Yeah, amazing freshman season. And we knew we talked about it. We said Jurassic was going to be tough, and I'd like to see that match again and see what happens. But exceptional season for Falcon, and as I said before, if she wins or doesn't win, I'd like to see her compete in the U.S. Open or the World Team Trials and see how she where she stands against some of the existing seniors at 50 kilograms.
Although it wasn't a perfect tournament for Life, they dominated. They scored 221 and a half points over second place Cumberland's with 159. Right now, it is absolutely Life's to win. William Penn is going to redshirt Caitlin Davis. So that eliminates a national champion from their lineup. Mia Palumbo has been injured all season. I hope she comes back because that would make 110 pounds even more loaded. It just seems like at this point, it's Life Universities up and down the lineup. They're 12 deep. I just don't see how they're going to get beat. But as soon as you start thinking that you've got the championship, that's when things can go south. But right now, from where I sit, it seems like it's Life's.
Barring just a weird down performance or somebody else having out of this world performance, it seems that way. So depth is very hard to overcome, and they have a very solid lineup top to bottom. I'd expect them to have a bunch of champs and finalists, and to take care of this tournament.
Bunch of champs and finalists, but you could also see a scenario where it is deep at some of these weight classes. William Penn has the two Nigerians that presumably will win at 117 and 145. Kolawale moved up from 138 to 145 to bolster that lineup since Kendall Bostelman's at 138. So, although there should be a lot of finalists for Life, getting that championship is going to be more difficult with a lot of those great wrestlers in the field.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great move, I think, by William Penn, moving Kalawali up and putting Bosman in. It just creates more depth, and Bosman's very, very solid wrestler. And I think Kalawali can take care of herself at 145. So that was a good move, and probably makes it closer. I think this is Life's to win based just on the lineup and depth, and they would have to have a really down tournament to not win. And they've been pretty consistent, so I'm not expecting to see that.
Sarah Savage won 6-5 over her teammate Olivia Motley. Ashley Flavin has to be feeling good about that because they're both going to be going to the national championships. But again, I didn't see it, but just went and looked at the result. It looked like Motley got a 4-point throw early in the second period, was behind, and then Savage ends up winning at 6-5. So we'll see how that plays out. But they can both score points, so that's going to be big for the Running Eagles.
for sure. I mean, it's very hard to judge when two athletes that are on the same team wrestle each other all the time. The natural tendency is the better wrestler tends to give up a little ground on the younger or lesser wrestler. They just get to see each other's moves, and it's a natural thing. So we don't know where she really stands, but it's good to get those two qualifiers. And that match was closer than I would have expected. But again, with a 4-point throw, it makes it closer.
Of the NAIA Championships and the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships, if someone asked what is the match I'm most excited about, it's the potential of Katie Gomez and Cristelle Rodriguez. We have talked about this. They, of course, dominated their way through their conference championships. They're both at 124. And to think that one of these wrestlers is not going to be an NAIA champion is kind of mind blowing given how good they are. When we go into this, what's your excitement level for a match like that?
You and I talked about it. My excitement level for that match is absolutely enormous. I've gone back and forth. At first, I thought, I was thinking Gomez, and we talked it out. I mean, I think tremendously of Rodriguez. She's a competitor, very talented wrestler. I want to see that match. I hope. I don't know the seeding. I really Gomez hasn't wrestled that many matches. It would be borderline tragic if they're not, if they're not on opposite sides of the bracket. That's a match I want to see in the finals, and I think will be very interesting.
So there's three power conferences. You have the Heart of America, Cascade, and the Mid-South. The other three aren't quite up to that standard, but when you have a chance to watch one of these, the Cascade was on FloWrestling, so got to watch all of the finals there. Carolina Moreno looked really good, had a fall over Paige Respicio, and again, you have to watch the match, but she dominated throughout, so feel good about Southern Oregon and what they can do at the championships. Don't think they have enough to overtake Life, but trophy contention for sure.
Yeah, I've mentioned Moreno a bunch of times. I mean, I think she doesn't get her due. She's a three-time, going on four-time national champion. Every time I ever, go to a tournament and click on the bracket and watch her wrestle, she like literally annihilates everybody she wrestles. So, yeah, I'm not gonna, she's really solid. She dominated Respicio, who's, we've talked about, who's, had some ups and downs, but I really want to see, where Moreno is, again, another athlete I want to see in the U.S. Open and or World Team Trials, and, see her, I think she got injured, as they said, last time I watched her wrestle at the U.S. Open, but she's having, a tremendous season, tremendous career, and it would be nice for her to get four.
Paige Morales of Providence shut down Emma Bartline of Southern Oregon 6-0. That was the other result that stood out to me. So Southern Oregon wins in a nail biter 166.5 to 162.5. And then Grandview over William Penn 192 to 173. So they won the conference. That's a reversal from the duel that Grandview lost to William Penn. And I didn't mention this when it happened, but that duel was outstanding. If anyone watched that duel on Iowa Public Television, women's wrestling won that night with an outstanding duel meet. It was action-packed, scoring all across the board. So if you tuned in for the first time and you happened to watch that duel,
yeah, these conference tournaments like that one, Grandview over William Penn and Southern Oregon, 166.5 to 162.5. That's like one match. So I can only imagine like being there. It must have been absolute mayhem with everybody cheering every point, every, almost point on the sidelines. And there is, being a wrestler, again, it's such kind of an individual sport, but I can tell you from experience, when your team is in a tight team race, even if your team isn't all that good, but you're in like a team race to win a tournament, it's really fun and special, and everybody's screaming and cheering. And we've talked about how the women are more into it than the men. I mean, I think that must have been a blast. And if spectators were fortunate to have been there, I think it would have been a really good event to watch.
seems like five teams are in contention for the NAIA Championships. Life, of course, William Penn, Grandview, Southern Oregon, and Providence. There'll be a few other teams that have quality wrestlers, but it seems like those five are your team contenders at this point. I just don't see any path, as I said, for a team other than Life at this point to win the championship. But hey, that's why you wrestle it. So we'll definitely be tuning in to see what happens in two
Yeah, and
weeks.
having five good teams is is good. Five really solid teams, and it's just only going to keep getting better, as we say. So, yeah, I'd be very surprised if Life doesn't win, but kind of would be fun to have to eat pie next week and say we were morons, and somebody else comes and wins it. So we'll see.
We'll see what happens there. We have the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships this upcoming weekend. March 7th and 8th at the Extreme Arena, which I love, in Coralville, Iowa. It's going to be Iowa's. It really is a race for second place. And when you break down what the tournament brackets look like, there were a couple that stood out to me, highlighted by 110 and 117. Kendra Ryan and Samantha Miller, they met twice at last year's national tournament. Ryan won in the quarterfinals by tech, and then in the consolation finals for third place, Samantha Miller, when she was at Mount Olive, got the fall over Kendra Ryan. So this is going to be a first round rematch of that. Hard to believe when you just think about that matchup happening in the first round. Hasn't been the best season for Miller. Kendra Ryan has been consistent throughout the year. She actually pinned Miller early in the season. Don't see that probably going the other way at this point, but nonetheless, you have a four-time All-American going against a three-time All-American in the first round.
Yeah, it should be a good first round match. And sometimes the seeding kind of works out funny, where if you're not one of the top seeds and you kind of get drawn in if you didn't have a great year or something, it actually hurts the higher seed, right? That they're going to have somebody that's pretty good and pretty competitive early, and it just sometimes happens. But no real surprises there. I think, Kyle, you and I talked about, I think, and I'm one of the first people to complain about seeding, just in general, in many cases. But to me, the tournament seems very well seeded. Nothing seemed wrong that I can disagree with, blatantly wrong. There were some people that were maybe seeded lower than I would have expected just based on past experience, but it was justified. Seeing the Naya Estrella, not in the top four seed is kind of not what I would think if I just looked at the list of wrestlers. But the results during the season and loss or two justified that. But in general, kudos to the seating committee. Very good job.
The other one, 117, Yu Sakamoto has a chance to avenge her only loss of the season against Sacred Heart's Nohea Moniz. As we've seen throughout the course of the year, we had a break in the action. Looked like Yu Sakamoto may be injured. Not quite sure why she was out of commission, then came back late in the season and has looked fantastic. And even in that finals match, she hit an unbelievable fall to get the conference championship or the regional championship. So she looks sharp right now. So she has a chance to avenge that match. Again, when you look at the opening round matches and things that catch your eye, that's definitely one that caught my eye.
Yeah, I'd like to see the match. I'm sure she wants to get her revenge. What's interesting to me, she wrestled a little bit different than, she stays in very good position, but she hits kind of more like big moves than many of the Japanese wrestlers and kind of aggressive moves. So, sometimes maybe take some risk, but I think she'll get her revenge. Maybe I'm wrong, but she's wrestled so well after that loss. It might have been her first match, actually. I'm not sure, but that'll be interesting, though. It's funny, sometimes you wish to get some revenge, and you're going to get your chance pretty early, so you don't have to worry about moving through the bracket. We'll see how it works out.
As we've mentioned, Iowa's depth. Here's how it has played out at 145 pounds. Of course, you have Macy Kilty as the one seed, returning national champion Reese Laramendi as the two seed, and then Bella Meir, who's at North Central, who was an All-American for Iowa last season. She transfers out. She is the three seed. So as we go into this, you have some interesting dynamics there. Possibility of Reese Laramendi facing Bella Meir. They're great friends that could happen at the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. Of course, a lot of these are probably great friends, and you have those types of matchups. But it is interesting as we've talked about what happens with Iowa's depth. Here's a situation where Bella Meir left the program in order to get an opportunity.
Really interesting to me is we have a potential semi-final if the seeds hold of Anu Drury versus Macy Kilty, which was a single World Team Trials best 2 out of 3 finals. So just think about that concept in a college nationals on the same side of the bracket of the two final, World Team Trial final competitors. Um, so, and then happens to be a very deep weight with very experienced, senior level wrestlers.
103, not sure if you had a chance to take a look at that, but that is absolutely loaded from top to bottom. I think that this is by far the most interesting bracket of the 10. Just top to bottom, you just you have Rhiannon Murphy as the number one, you have a returning national finalist as the three, you have a returning national champion as the nine. Just
Huh,
interesting how this plays out. Olivia Shore is a returning national
before,
champion. She
yeah.
is the four. Just top to bottom, Rihanna Sagoon from Grand Valley State is the five, and she has wins over some of the best competition in the field, including Sterling Diaz. So just top to bottom, if I was looking at a weight class, said, what's the weight class I should be watching? It's going to be 103.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I would bet a lot of money that as we go through the bracket, it's not going to be chalk and just move to the seeds. I think people will beat each other and it will not, go straight because they all have wins over each other at periods of time. So I think it's a very exciting weight. A lot of very good wrestlers, and we'll see what happens. But it's a wide open weight class, in my opinion.
110, you have Sage Mortimer as the top seed. She has that potential to meet her former teammate in Samara Chavez at some point. So you have two former King wrestlers. We talked about the Iowa situation. You have Sage Mortimer transferring from King to Grand Valley State and has looked fantastic all season. You have the returning national champion on the bottom side in Ava Bayless. 110, again, I think it's the best field, NAIA and NCAA combined in the country, and we will see this play out. Your thoughts on 110?
I mean, it's just a very deep weight class, and you and I have talked about Mortimer, a bunch. Um, Chavez being very good. And Baylor, I mean, this is just solid top to bottom. I'd expect Mortimer to win, but Chavez, has blown two matches against her in the last few seconds. So, if they meet, I'd expect it to be a Mortimer Chavez final. Maybe Bayless, will prove me wrong. Gonzalez as a five is crazy. It's just going to be pretty fun to watch, and I do agree with you that it is probably the best weight in the country.
Another one that is one to circle 131 pounds. Jacqueline Daney of New England is 28-0, two forfeits, 26 pins, and 25 of those pins are in the first period. She faces All-American Lily Shearer. Shearer was an All-American in 2023. It will be interesting to see if she can continue that streak. And watching Daney's matches, she gets takedowns. It's not necessarily throws. She likes to get that bar half in and get the fall. We'll see if that streak continues, but it's going to be tough at the national championships. She's going to face some top competition as the four seed.
Yeah, we'll see how good she is. I mean, you and I were going through the brackets and we looked at that, and then we were both surprised that she was 28-0, with 25 pins. But we'll see how she does against better competition. That's a Lily Shear. It's a tough first round match, so that we'll get a feel for that right away.
Zoe Gress against Emily Patno in the first round. Gress is a two-time All-American, so Patno from Iowa has Gress in an opening match. And then at 180, Britton Corbishley against Jacqueline Smith. Corbishley has a big task against a two-time All-American. North Central going to be in that race for second place, so that's going to be important in the first round to be able to get that match off and running. As we break down what can happen for this second place race, with Iowa clearly going to win this championship. Seems like it's going to be North Central, McKendree, Grand Valley State. I think Presbyterian, if they put some things together, they have some quality depth there that they could make a run and borderline push the competition. They're not quite sure they're in that second place position yet, but their quality. Colorado Mesa is going to be making a push for that top 4 and 5. There's some good teams in there, but it seems like those are the teams that are going to be going back and forth and really establishing themselves for team points.
Yeah, I think any of those teams just need two or three wrestlers to go on fairly deep runs, and you can move into that second spot. Obviously, many of the weight classes Iowa will have first or top three wrestlers, so it's really going to be who can get pushes in some of the either upset people or just move towards some of the weaker weights. I mean, I would add, when you mentioned 31, Patno has been wrestling very well. So, she's a 6 seed, but, I want to see how well she does. I think that weight's actually fairly open. Obviously, Janie X the one has done well, but I really think there's, five, six wrestlers that can, compete to win that weight. So to me, that's an interesting weight in that it's wide open. Even 24, really solid weight. I mean, you have Amani Jones who's beaten everybody, but she wrestled Montana DeLauder for King and was losing at one point, and I think stuck her. But then you have, Shelby Moore is highly accoladed wrestler on the junior level, and then has done pretty well in singles as well. Placed high in the U.S. Open. Aspen Blasco is very tough. Kelly Lang's wrestling great lately. And you have somebody like an Allie Fitzgerald who's like a 10 seed. So that just shows you the depth in that weight class. Obviously, I'd expect Amani Jones to be the favorite, but I think she could be challenged.
Yeah, challenge in Callie Lang. If I'm a coach, she makes me nervous because she continues to get better with every outing. She's tough mentally. She's a grinder. So if you're not fully in on that match, and if you're not ready to compete and throw down, that's a match that I could see her really pushing Amani Jones if they meet up in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a national tournament, basically, if you don't prepare for every match like it's a really serious opponent, you're making a big mistake because, who knows where somebody is off the scale or just they're thinking ahead. It's a natural tendency to look at a bracket and say, I'm going to beat this person in the semis. But at the end of the day, especially when somebody's a high seed, the low seeds want nothing more, or unseeds, nothing more than to upset a higher seed. So to them, it's like the finals, and it could be the first round. You're just thinking you're just, getting by that match. So you have to really be very disciplined in your mental preparation, taking every opponent very serious.
Let's close that out. National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. It will be live on FloWrestling. We hope you will attend in person March 7th and 8th in Coralville. It's the last year before the NCAA takes over the championship. So this is a historic national championships for the NCAA programs. Do have to mention the ranking tournament that just took place. Love that this sets up the international season, which we get excited about. What stood out to you, Scott?
Well, before we get in the ranking series, I just on the men's wrestling side, I want to say that yesterday Babasar Satiev passed away. He was 49 years old, one of the best wrestlers ever. He was a three-time Olympic gold medalist, six-time world champ. And the crazy thing is, when he didn't win Olympic gold, his brother Adam actually won in a different weight class, and he was defeated by Brandon Slay of the United States in probably one of the biggest upsets in the history of wrestling. No disrespect to Brandon Slay, but Satiev was just a very interesting wrestler, non-conventional, very kind of lanky, creative, and nobody knows or I haven't seen the cause of death, but the wrestling world has lost one of the true greats. In terms of the ranking series, it was interesting. Ukraine sent a good team, had a good performance. We sent a bunch of athletes. We did pretty well, especially in the upper weights. Diamond Guilford won, had a great tournament. Gaudet wound up taking a bronze at 72 kilograms, where it was ABCB, BBC, CBC, where she was in a position to win. But she lost to the Ukrainian Belinska, who's pretty solid. Jen Page got injured. I don't know the extent of that. Dugo, it's a fledgling rivalry where she lost to Biljana Dudova from Bulgaria in a very close match, 6-4. She had beat her in that great match, the last ranking series, with a great late takedown to gut wrench at the end of the match. So that's a rivalry that's starting to happen. Felicity Taylor was in a very tough weight class where she had Mukiuka from Japan. In the first round, she got tacked, and then a Chinese wrestler in the repechage. Well, we had a bronze from Aaron Goldstein, who lost to Oksana Livac, who's a two-time, I believe, two-time world bronze medalist, I think. From Ukraine, is very solid, but came back to take a bronze and beat a good Chinese athlete for the bronze medal. Amanda Martinez lost a couple of close matches, but came back to win a bronze. And Abinetti had a tough draw versus Onishi of Japan, who's very, very good. She's one of these people that I haven't heard of her, but she's like in that next group coming up. Um, so that was a tough draw for her. But overall, I think very solid performance by the U.S., especially in the upper weights. And this was a tough ranking series.
This all leads into the U.S. Open in Las Vegas at the end of April. We talk a lot about the NAIA Championships, NCAA, and then the ranking series. I love it when everything gets mixed together and we can just sort this out at a senior level tournament. So I hope a lot of these college wrestlers go to Vegas and compete in that because you're going to have the women's nationals a month before, so you're going to have a month gap. So go try to make your age level world team, but I want to see some of these top girls from college enter the U.S. Open and see where everything is and see where it shakes out.
Yeah, and I think that the top ones will, if they really believe they have a chance to, make a world team. Because if you win the U.S. Open, you sit out into Final X. So even though the national champs of the NAIA and the NWCA qualify for the World Team Trials, I think that some of the good ones, want to go to the U.S. Open, unless like in Macy Kilty's situation, she's a world medalist, so she's in Blades is an Olympic medalist, so they're already going to sit in the finals, so they probably wouldn't. But if you have a situation where you have a non-world medalist that even that wins the national tournament, it's still to their advantage to go to the U.S. Open. I'm expecting that to be a very exciting, fun tournament. It's a great city to have the tournament. It tends to be a great environment for wrestling in general, and I'm looking forward to it myself. And hopefully a lot of these athletes that we talk about will go to see where they are. Even if you're not a national champion, but you want to start to see where you stand and what you need to work on versus top seniors.
And we haven't talked about her as much just because she hasn't competed. Would love to see where Audrey Jimenez is at this point. She is a Final Xer. She's been in that situation. She's one of the best wrestlers in our country. Sarah Hildebrand is out. So if she's ready to go after an injury, where does she stack up against some of these quality wrestlers? And does Sage Mortar make a push? Can she get to the finals? Just a lot of questions, especially at 50 kilos.
Absolutely. And don't think Erin Goldstein isn't, licking her chops. She's been on the senior circuit, for a very long time, always had, between when Sarah dropped down, but before that, you had Clarissa Chun, Alyssa Lampy, Victoria Anthony. So that weight was absolutely stacked. And then, all of a sudden, those people retire or leave. And then, you have Sarah drops down. So Erin Goldstein's been wrestling very well. Big fan of Erin. So she's, going to be one of the top competitors. She's very savvy, very experienced, and then we'll see Jimenez, who made Final X. And then, a lot of these other names we've been talking about, we'll see where they are. Like, we'll see where an Anaya Falcon is. We'll see where Mortimer is. And, Chavez, if she goes. I mean, this is going to be, that's a wide open weight now. So they should all be gung-ho and licking their chop.
And as we've talked about injuries, Emily Shilson, she's an age level world champion, and we haven't seen her since the Bill Farrell, so we don't know the status of her. So just add another one into the mix at 50 kilograms. There's going to be some good wrestlers in that bracket that are not going to place in the top eight. So that's how deep 110 is, or 50 kilograms. That really is probably the most competitive weight at this point now that Sarah's out of the mix.
Yeah, it's certainly the deepest weight. If you say, is that the weight that we have like the best chance of medaling in the world? I'd say absolutely not, right? But it's going to be the most competitive weight, to make the world team in terms of number of athletes that have a legitimate shot, to win the title.
And then I hope we can filter this out. I hope there's some sort of a conversation with Terry that let's spread out the wealth at 68, 72, and 76, where you get Kennedy Blades, Kylie Welker, and Amit Elor trying to go at those three weight classes. That's only going to help the United States if we can get that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to probably have some of that. You've already probably seen it with Blades kind of going down for the college season and competing at a low weight in the ranking series. And then you also have, from the last ranking series we just had, you have Ami Ishii, who is a world champion who did not wrestle Elor because they're at different weight classes, but that's another solid upper weight for Japan. Who, I mean, it's hard to say anybody could challenge Elor, but you never know. I suspect that there will be some conversations and try to get our best lineup. At the end of the day, though, anybody that's at this level, believes they can win, right? So I think within reason, they're all willing to kind of spread out and stay away from each other. But if it doesn't work for one of the people, where they're having a hard weight cut or they don't like the international landscape in that weight, then they're gonna, I think, say, well, I don't care. I'll try to make the team at the weight that's best for me. But conversations definitely do happen.
We got to mention again after seeing the ranking series that Japan is so absolutely loaded going into another Olympic quad.
Japan is just, we've talked about this ad infinitum. They're just exceptionally deep, but like they're even at 50 kilos. You have Umi Ito, who won and pretty much dominated, attacked everybody. And she's, second or third on the ladder. She's the one that Mortimer pinned, after she was losing. But they're just exceptionally solid, top to bottom. And, they threw some names, that are the younger names, and they 59 kilograms. You also had Unishi, who's, Sakura Nishi, who's very solid. And, she beat a solid field, but, you had Vinik from Ukraine, who's a U23 world champion, Sidelnikova from, Russia, who's a U20 world champion, and she annihilated all of them. So, yeah, it's going to be hard to, take them out.
Your home state, New York, just hosted the girls freestyle state championships. What do you think about that?
It was really good to see, and it was in freestyle. I think it's a long time coming. The state has a fairly decent history of some pretty good wrestlers coming out, and Nikki Macaluso did a little thing where she got some of the wrestlers that are some of the better wrestlers from New York to give some shout outs on a video, which is pretty cool. It's about time. We're not, where we should be, I think but, the state over the years has done well. And I think this is a major step to just, keeping participation growing and, challenging states like California more consistently.